Felix Auger-Aliassime.
Bianca Andreescu is a US Open champion. Shapovalov with the moment.
Lola Fernandez. It is another performance to remember for the Canadians.
All right, we're back for another edition of North of the Net, a Canadian tennis show by The Slice Tennis, presented by BetStamp. This week, Stephen and I are pleased to be joined by TSN tennis host Mark Rowe. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Always love to be a friend of the Slice here. Feel like we do this every few months, and you guys are doing an awesome job, so it's great to join you.
Thank you. The Canucks are all over the court right now, all over the map, I should say. Stockholm, Guadalajara, Florence with some notable highlights. Felix just claimed his second career ATP Tour title. Rebecca Marino winning her first WTA 1000 main draw win. And Bianca bageled Kvitova. Chapo's in Stockholm, where my astute co-host is. He's playing in the quarters tomorrow, I believe. We really harp on the big four a lot, Mark. But in terms of up-and-comers, who is most impressive to you of late?
Well, one of the benefits of being at the U.S. Open is being there for the full 2 weeks, which means you're also there to watch the juniors. And we've been, so focused on Layla and Dennis and Felix and Bianca, and before that, it was Milos and Genie and Bashik, and we covered them all as juniors. And so the big question is who's next, and can there be another group of Canadians that have the same sort of success? And the name that you're going to hear a lot is Vicky Mboko, who just turned 16. She reached the semifinals at Wimbledon and at this year's U.S. Open. Reached the final in doubles at Wimbledon with Kayla Cross, who's also another young player that Tennis Canada is excited about. But just watching Mboko play, and it doesn't take any kind of astute expert, which I don't consider myself. Just watching her and the level of play that she can play at is so much higher than everyone else that is playing. But she's also prone to making mistakes, like a lot of teenagers would make at a U.S. Open or any tournament. But she won a tournament in Saskatoon earlier this year. And when we chatted with Sylvain Bruno, who's the head of the high performance for Tennis Canada, of course, we all remember him as Bianca Andreescu's coach. And in terms of comparing some of her attributes, he used the names Coco Gauff and Serena Williams. I don't want to, attach him to saying she's going to be the next Serena Williams, but that gives you an idea of just how excited Tennis Canada is about Mboko and what her prospects are like for the future. So Canada just keeps on producing these great tennis players, which is great for us, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, Brendan, I feel like we're getting now. It's like, we're saying what's next when the core four, as we call them, are all like 23.
Chapo's the 23.
Oldest. He's the oldest, and he's 20. It's kind of ridiculous. Now we're just getting greedy, maybe, but that's a great call on Vicky. She's amazing. I was just looking. She's born in 2006. I don't know about you guys, but that makes me feel like incredibly old.
Yeah. I was in university.
I remember 2006.
Yeah,
probably I don't know, but for me the most exciting player, I guess, on the men's side is Gabriel Diallo. I've talked with him and Alexei Galarneau. He's a little bit older, and Gabe's not as young as Vicky, but he's kind of just really come into his own through his college experience. He told me that when he went to the University of Kentucky, he was just way too skinny, wasn't mature enough to try and go pro at that time. But he just made the final of another challenger in Fairfield after winning the Granby Challenger earlier in the summer. And he'd only won one challenger level match before winning that tournament. So it was really out of nowhere. And he's beating everyone that he played was higher ranked than him. So he's 6'7". 7'6" would be pretty tall. 6'7", which is like, on the Davis Cup pictures, or I don't know how much of you guys watched the Davis Cup. He made Felix look like short compared to him, which is kind of crazy. If you've ever stood beside Felix, he's got world-class serve, huge game, and just like a total fighting spirit. So he's also from Montreal, and he trains actually at Felix's dad's academy. So I don't know what the French side of our country is doing, but they're like putting out, like, I would say the majority of the tennis talent right now. And he's a guy to look out for sure.
I don't know if you guys saw, but if you Google Denis Shapovalov, the first photo is Connor McDavid. So someone from Google, perhaps an intern, has to alter that.
I have noticed that.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but
I'm gonna pull that up. I'm gonna do that right now and check, see if it's the same thing in Sweden. Hilarious.
Mark, you had a chance to interview Roger Federer. This was a jam-packed filled summer with news and emotions and retirements. Serena gone, Roger gone. What was it like to interview Roger?
Yeah, at this stage of my career, I'd like to say that I'm not starstruck very easily. I have been very lucky to meet some pretty big athletes. I was starstruck when I first interviewed Roger Federer, and just you're in such awe of him, and I don't know the last time I've ever been in awe of someone like that. And it is a couple of things. One, here is one of the greatest athletes of all time, and here he made me and my camera operator Ryan Vardy feel like we were the more important people in the room, which is ridiculous to say. He was super excited to be on Canada's sports network. I don't know if he's just a really good salesman or he just generally was happy to be there. He gave great answers. He was charming and funny and and also gave really intelligent answers. And it played off of the first time that I ever met him. And I didn't interview him, but I was in the main press room at the US Open. And I saw this guy charm the room in 3 different languages. Like grown men were laughing and like almost like blushing around him. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I've never in my life, regardless of an athlete, I've never met someone who went from English to French to the Swiss German, which is his real native language. And in a span of like literally 2 minutes, everyone was just like eating in the palm of Roger Federer. And it was so to get to interview him a year later after that. And essentially for me to do the same thing was pretty cool. So I'm glad that I got to meet him and chat with him before he retired.
That's awesome. And obviously the inevitable question comes up now that he's gone. The big 3 is no more. The 3 big pillars on the men's side: Joker, Nadal, Federer. So I'm going to ask both of you to quickly maybe comprise who potentially could be the next big 3, because there's a lot of studs that are making a name for themselves. Ruud, Sinner, Alcaraz, perhaps even Felix. Who do you guys like? Who can you comprise as maybe your potential next big 3?
I think a good question is also for Mark to add, it makes into that. Do you think there will be a next big 3? Like that's, I would guess it's a pretty.
I was going to say, this would be a lot easier if you asked me the next 6. Or 7, right?
Yeah.
Because in truth, we're not going to have a big 3 like Djokovic, Rafa, and Federer. I think we can all agree with that. I think it would be preposterous to think that, we'll get one of those guys, let alone 3 all at the same time. Maybe in our lifetime, we'll have someone that's knocking on the door of 20 Grand Slams. But I'll jump in quickly with the obvious first guy, who's Carlos Alcaraz, because not only is he world number 1, he's the youngest. While we haven't seen him go super deep out of Wimbledon, I'm pretty sure that he'll be able to have success on that surface. Obviously, he can win on a hard court and a clay surface. The sport is gravitating towards him, regardless of the results. The smile, the energetic way that he plays, how athletic he is. So, I think he's part of everyone's conversation. I think that there was a lot of knee-jerk reaction to the Jannik Sinner and Francis Tiafoe at the U.S. Open, and probably because it's a lot of Americans who want Tiafoe to be part of it. So I'm going to exclude him. But I do think Sinner showed me a lot this year with his consistency at the slams and going deep in all of them. I know he got hurt at the French Open, but he's a great clay court player, so I'm not necessarily worried that he won't have success there. So I'll put Sinner in, and then I'll be the biased Canadian and think Felix as well, because the same thing. He's shown it at the Grand Slams. I know he's been inconsistent at times in his career, but for the most part, he has kind of risen to the place where he should be at the majors. He's done it on all the surfaces, and he's starting to win tournaments, right? Like that was the big story, that he got to the final. He kept losing. I thought it was huge to win, in Florence as the top seed, as someone who was supposed to win, because his whole life he's been the guy who's supposed to win. I think part of that has gotten to him a little bit mentally. So I'm starting to see a little bit of a turn there. So Yeah, call me the Canadian who's picking the Canadian, but Felix Auger-Aliassime will round out my big three as I do air quotes here.
That's solid. That cannot be considered scandalous to pick Felix as in that group, because he's amazing. And yeah, he's been like, even the other players on tour call him the chosen one. I know that, or they call him, I think, ATM, because he's just like the perfect, sponsor happy player.
That's funny that you said that, because I've heard two players like in person call him the chosen one, like just in a back hallway.
Yeah,
and he kind of laughs, and I feel like maybe he's comfortable with it now. At first, I think that he was a little uncomfortable when he was like 20, and they were doing that. And they were doing that.
Yeah.
No, sure, exactly.
To answer from my side of things, I would put him in there, and I would say, I agree with Mark. There's no chance we're getting three guys who win 20 slams out of this next crop. Not because they're not amazing, but just because of how amazing the big three is. Like, I think they're the three greatest ever. And, it would, the fact that our expectation is like, double digit slams for any good player now is just preposterous, right? Like before these guys came around, I think there was only like a handful of guys who had more than 10 slams. Anyways. So yeah, but the guys at the top of the list, Carlos, has to be the guy. Like nobody since Djokovic, and he even came like a little bit older in his career, or really Nadal has escalated to the peak of the game as fast as Carlos did. And he I feel like last year at the US Open, he lost after beating Tsitsipas, and we're like, man, that kid's he's going to be so good someday. Like 12 months later, was he going to be number one in the world and just won the US Open? I didn't think that. And I don't think a lot of people did. He's like the guy right now. And then I think it's going to be like a Big Ten kind of like, I think there's going to be a group. I think it's hopefully going to be, I love the WTA right now because it's so exciting to me, because Iga has kind of separated herself a bit. So it's kind of like, who can beat Iga now? But for a while there was a group of 10 or so women that could totally win a slam. So I kind of hope, I hope we go into an era like that with the guys where it's like, our Alcaraz, Sinner, Felix, and let's not forget about Tsitsipas. Obviously, like he's right there. Zverev, I think he'll come back. They can all win slams, and they will win slams. And then there's guys like, I think Shapo, I still think he'll win a slam.
It's funny that those are all old guys, right?
Yeah, old. Yeah, Tsitsipas is 23. He's like, I'm watching him here this week in Stockholm, and like it shocks me that he hasn't won a slam. And that's a big thing I want to just wanted to mention as well, like that the pressure. Like I've noticed it covering tennis, really in and out for the last couple of years. Pressure to win is unbelievably hard to play with, no matter who you are. Whether that's your rec league where I'm supposed to beat like the 14-year-old guy I'm playing, which I've lost to them. I won't lie. It's just when you're supposed to win, that makes tennis way harder, and that's why the big three are so crazy, because they basically have been supposed to win every match they played, and they basically have. But Carlos said, if you guys remember, I think it was in Toronto actually. He lost early. I think he lost to Tommy Paul in the first round in his first match. And he said, I felt like I was one of the favorites at this tournament because I think he was the 2 seed. He's like, and I'm not used to that. And I didn't like that feeling. And I got tight basically. He's very upfront. So it was cool to hear him talk about that. And then he came through that at the US Open to win, which is just crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see how all these young guys now feeling like they can win once, Nadal and Djokovic go away, how they handle the pressure and rise to it. And that's something that's affected Tsitsipas, I think, in the last 12 months now. But I think he's going to have a big next year and a big comeback from kind of some disappointment this year.
Yeah, well, it just shows you how loaded the tour is, right? Like I like how Mark alluded to earlier, like the next big six. Like there probably won't be another big three. It just shows you how competitive the field is, right? I want to ask Mark, as an astute broadcaster, Mark, your most rewarding experience as a reporter / host, and maybe kind of like, an awkward moment, or kind of like, okay, now I'm in the big show and I got to be better, or something like that, or you were, just a welcome to the big league, as they say in the NHL.
Right. Okay. Most rewarding.
Besides coming on the slice, I know that's going to be very high up there.
That goes without saying.
You don't have to say it. It's okay.
The U.S. Open's not giving me any mugs. Thank you very much.
Let's go.
I'll say this, just like in terms of the tennis aspect, last year's U.S. Open was the most fun I've had at a tournament from start to finish, because you had Layla and Felix going deep, and obviously the better the Canadians do, the better our coverage is, and more exciting, and we get to do more things. We get to do what we call flash interviews, which is when you go out onto the court and you interview the winning player. So if they don't win, we don't get to do that. So and Layla was really the story in the city and the tournament, even more so than Novak Djokovic going for the Grand Slam, which is still I have to remind myself how crazy that is. In terms of one event, it's Bianca's final against Serena. Just the buildup of that day, the fact that the whole building was there to see Serena match Margaret Court, the fact that it was Bianca, this meteoric rise in 2019, where I remembered watching her play in qualifying the year before, and she lost in the first round, and she was pretty much a disaster in that match because she was hurt and everything, and it was just just what happened in a span of 12 months. And the story I always tell, and sorry, Steven, if I've told you this one as well, but I was, Bianca had things under control in that match. She was up a set and up at least a break or two. And we're in that hallway ready to go out to the court. And Serena made her comeback and made it 5-5 in the second set. And I'm pressed against like a really big concrete wall. And that wall was shaking. That's how loud it was. And I thought to myself, like maybe now Bianca's finally a teenager and she's in real trouble, and then wins the next two games and then wins the title. Right? So that is the singular kind of moment that I'll always remember, whether it's, and people congratulated me on her win, which I don't know if you guys have ever gotten that, but you're always a little uncomfortable. Like, thanks. I didn't do anything, but I'll take it. I don't want to take anything away from her. So, there's been a few like welcome to the big league moments. The one just as a career wise, when this is back in my hockey days when I worked at the NHL Network, and for Leaf fans, plug your ears. In 2013, when they blew that big lead against the Bruins, I was working that night. And that was that was my first year at the NHL Network, and that was the most exciting bit of live television I've done. And we were on the air for like 3 or 4 hours, just because of the nature of how that game unfolded. And we're going live to different places, and we're discussing with different analysts. I remember driving home and thinking, "What the hell happened to me?" Like 10 years ago, I don't know, I might have cried. Like I grew up as a Leaf fan, and that's how this job has changed me, where sure, would I like to see Toronto win because of the market that I live in and that fan base? Absolutely. But I'm not living and dying with every game like maybe I did as a kid. So that, and then one small thing, definitely got yelled at by the ATP in my first US Open because when Felix so if you remember when Felix had the heart ablation against Shapovalov, when he had to retire, and it was a really scary moment. Right? Where he had this this irregular heartbeat, which he's since had an operation on. And there was some confusion with how he was handling press. And they said, at least it was like, okay, you have one question with him. Okay. And I stuck a mic in front of him and he just started talking and he just explained what happened. And I didn't take that as a question. So I started asking, and ATP PR flipped out on me, and I had to like apologize for the next 2 weeks. Like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, and it's water under the bridge now. I see the same people, and we can probably laugh about it. But I just remember that moment thinking, like, I'm going to get kicked out of the U.S. Open. It's like day 2.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
No more media meals.
It's like credential revoked.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, that's that's funny. Like, I love how you just started talking, like, for you just put your mic there and he just like starts explaining what happened,
Like, I think because he had already done it to the written press. So I think he knew, like, okay, here's the statement we're giving out on my situation, and they didn't want it, elaborate on that, which I, in the chaos of it, I didn't realize, like, that was the bit you're getting, and you're not, because I just followed up with, I forget what my follow up was, but like, has this been an issue before or whatever, right? And it was not. Felix was fine. Like, it wasn't that Felix was mad at me, but everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we told you one question.
Yeah. Can get intense.
Threw you for a loop.
Yeah.
Were the media meals good in Flushing Meadows, or was it kind of just like mailed in one day and then just like very gourmet the next?
Meal
chats with Mark.
Yeah. So the media area is like a cafeteria.
You're right.
So it's not bad.
Yeah.
I would say it's not bad. Now, our set is above the player's kitchen, and we've made friends with them, and we can sneak in there a little bit. And that's where you can get a steak done however you want. You can get fresh sushi. You can get salmon. You can get, whatever you want. And we did a feature on the kitchen during the U.S. Open this year because we had some time on our hands in the second week because of the
yeah.
So,
never a good thing to have.
That would put it an A+, where the media would be like a B+.
Okay. Gotcha.
Which makes sense. It's the athletes.
Yeah.
They don't have enough good food to go around for everyone. Let's be serious here.
No, that's true.
We could do a whole show, Brendan, I think, on now after all my experiences here in Europe on media meals and what constitutes it's like the different tournaments, and it's like there's like a tier system. Like those like videos where they do a graph and they just go like, this is the level of tournament you're at, this is the type of food you're getting.
Yeah. You're getting either a challenger meal, a 250 meal, the 500, and then maybe the Masters 1000. You get like some, like some roast beef or something,
or a sandwich that's just too tightly wrapped, takes you an hour to unfold it.
Right.
Oh man, I will say the Miami Open. That's the only Masters I've actually been into in person because we did virtual for the NBO. They had full buffet, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was pretty sweet. I ate well there then, but then some of the tournaments I've been here in Europe, not naming any names, it's been like the same wrapped sandwich every day in the bin. I was like 6th day in a row, you're just like ripping on it. It's like taking the color out of your face, but you're just gonna take it. But no, that's cool. Thanks for those stories, Mark. It's it's really cool to be able. You've been at the helm of like Canadian tennis, basically covering like the most insane increase in talent and wins and all that we've had. So I've personally it's just great timing, right? So it's like I've seriously enjoyed. I've stayed up many late nights with you. It seems like during the Australian Open, I'm at 2 a.m. or whatever. Was watching you round it all up. It's kind of in that together. So as Brendan and I audience and you commander, it's been cool.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much for joining us this week, Mark. Be sure to follow us, Slice fans, on our YouTube channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms, and we'll see you next week on North of the Net.